Listen closely. Do you hear that? It's the sound of 1,000 men suffocating in silk sheets, drowning in perfume they once craved like oxygen. There's an old Venetian tale. Perhaps you've heard it whispered in the corners of wine-dark bars where divorced men gather like moths to dying flames, about a merchant who fell in love with a courtesan whose beauty could make priests forget their vows. She wore velvet gloves, always velvet, even in the suffocating heat of August, when the canals reeked of decay and promise. The merchant gave her everything: his gold, his ships, his reputation. And she? She gave him exactly what he asked for, herself completely, overwhelmingly, until her presence filled every corner of his life like smoke from a fire that burns but gives no warmth. Within a year, he couldn't breathe without tasting her lipstick in the air. Within 2, he'd forgotten the sound of his own thoughts. By the 3rd year, when they found him floating face down in the canal, the authorities called it suicide. But the old women who washed clothes by the water, they knew better. They'd seen it before. Men who drowned not in water, but in the very thing they'd spent their lives chasing. You see, Machiavelli understood something that modern dating coaches with their spreadsheets and evolutionary psychology theories will never grasp. Seduction isn't about obtaining. It's about creating a prison so beautiful that the prisoner begs for smaller cells. The moment you believe you need someone, truly need them, like lungs need air, you've already fitted the noose around your own neck. And here's the delicious irony that would make Schopenhauer laugh until he wept. The more desperately you pull at the rope, the more elegantly it tightens. A 2024 study from the Institute of Relationship Dynamics found that men who described themselves as completely fulfilled by their partners showed 73% higher cortisol levels than single men who claimed loneliness. Fascinating, isn't it? The body knows what the mind refuses to admit: that total possession is indistinguishable from total annihilation. But here's where it gets interesting, where the velvet turns to wire and cuts through all our pretty illusions. The most successful seducers, the ones who could have any woman, any time, as you so desperately desire, are the ones who've learned to love the rope without needing to wear it. They dance with desire like a matador with a bull, close enough to feel its breath, never close enough to be gored. They understand what Kierkegaard meant when he wrote that the most profound relationships are built on the anxiety of potential loss, not the security of possession. Picture this. A man sits alone in a dimly lit apartment, the walls lined with books that smell of mold and wisdom. Outside, rain taps against the window like the fingers of former lovers seeking entry. He pours himself wine, not to forget, but to remember more clearly. He's learned the secret that destroyed Don Juan and saved Casanova. True power in seduction comes not from needing to seduce, but from being perfectly content with the possibility of failure. The velvet noose only strangles those who believe they need to wear it. There's a certain species of spider in the Amazon that weaves silk so fine it's invisible to the naked eye. The prey doesn't even know it's trapped until it tries to leave. Modern love operates on the same principle. Instagram stories, read receipts, the constant performance of availability. We've created digital velvet nooses, each notification tightening the silk around our throats. And we call it connection. We call it love. Nietzsche would call it the last man's desperate attempt to feel anything at all. So here's my question for you, whispered like a confession in a confessional booth where the priest has long since abandoned his post. What if the very thing you're chasing, this power to seduce anyone, anytime, is actually the most elaborate form of self-strangulation ever devised? What if Machiavelli's forbidden method isn't about getting others to love you, but about learning to breathe without anyone's permission? The merchant's ghost still wanders the Venetian canals, they say, looking for his velvet-gloved lover. But she was never real, just silk and shadow, desire wearing a beautiful mask. He drowned in his own reflection, thinking it was her face he saw in the water. Every declaration of love is a confession of inadequacy. There's a cathedral in Prague where lovers go to whisper their promises into the stone. The acoustics are perfect. Every word carries, reverberates, returns sevenfold. But if you visit at 3 in the morning, when the tourists have fled and only the rats remain as witnesses, you'll hear something else entirely. The walls remember everything. Every forever, every always, every I can't live without you. They're all still there, bouncing off the walls like birds that forgot how to die. A janitor who's worked there for 40 years told me something once, over cigarettes that tasted like disappointment and clarity. The stone doesn't lie. Listen long enough, and you'll hear the same voice making the same promise to different names. Sometimes 3, 4, 5 times across the decades. Always with the same desperate intensity, always believing this time it's different. You want to know Machiavelli's forbidden method? Here it is, carved into the cathedral walls by 10,000 desperate hands. The moment you tell someone you love them, you've already admitted you're incomplete. You've shown your cards, revealed your wound, pointed to exactly where the knife should go. Love letters are suicide notes written in advance. Every poem is a white flag. Every serenade is the sound of someone drowning in their own inadequacy, hoping someone else's breath can save them. I knew a man once, brilliant mathematician, the kind who saw patterns in chaos that others couldn't even imagine. He fell in love with silence. Not a woman who was quiet, but silence itself. He'd sit in soundproof rooms for hours, listening to his own heartbeat slow, feeling his thoughts settle like sediment in still water. One day, a colleague asked him about relationships. He laughed, not bitterly, but with genuine amusement. I realized, he said, that every word of love I'd ever spoken was just noise trying to fill a silence I was too afraid to meet. The latest neuroscience from Stockholm's Institute of Emotional Mapping, 2025, shows something disturbing. The brain regions that activate during declarations of love are identical to those that fire during panic attacks. The same chemical cocktail, the same desperate electricity. We've literally evolved to experience love as a form of existential terror dressed in evening wear. But here's where it gets deliciously dark, where Schopenhauer meets Sade in a wine bar at the end of the world. The people who are truly irresistible, the ones who could seduce stone itself, never declare anything. They create spaces for others to echo. They build cathedrals of silence where desperate lovers come to hear their own voices bounce back, mistaking the echo for an answer. Think about it. Really think about it. Let it crawl under your skin like those tiny fish in the Amazon that swim up your urethra if you're foolish enough to piss in their river. When was the last time someone's silence seduced you more than their words? When did absence become more intoxicating than presence? There's an old Romanian folktale about a woman who never spoke a word of love to anyone. Men would travel across kingdoms just to sit in her presence, to fill her silence with their confessions. She died wealthy beyond measure, surrounded by love letters she never opened, poems she never read. At her funeral, they say 1,000 men wept, each convinced she had loved only them. Her gravestone reads, "Here lies the only honest lover." The cathedral in Prague has a secret room beneath the main altar. The priests deny it exists, but I've seen it. The walls are covered in scratched-out names, violent erasures, the archaeological evidence of love's aftermath. Someone tried to burn it once. The stone wouldn't take the flame. It just absorbed the soot, turned the declarations into shadows of themselves. You're sitting there, reading this, perhaps with coffee growing cold, or wine growing warm, and you're wondering, but surely there must be something pure in expressing love? Let me ask you this instead, and answer honestly, as if your life depended on it, which in a way it does. Have you ever, even once, said, "I love you" without wanting something in return? Without the secret hope of an echo? Without the desperate need for validation that you exist, that you matter, that your emptiness might finally be filled? Kierkegaard wrote that the highest form of love is to love without hope of reciprocation. But even he was lying. Even that is a performance. The noble sacrifice, the beautiful martyrdom, we're all just shouting into stone, hoping the echo sounds like someone else's voice. The cathedral still stands, lovers still visit, the cycle continues. And somewhere in Prague, there's a janitor who's heard every possible combination of words that mean nothing, smoking cigarettes in the dark, knowing that silence is the only love letter that never lies. What blooms in pursuit withers in possession. In the basement of the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris, there's a manuscript no one talks about, written by a 17th century botanist who went mad studying roses. He documented something peculiar. Roses grown in gardens where lovers meet last half as long as those grown in cemeteries. The sweeter the romance enacted beneath their petals, the faster they rot. He died convinced that love itself was a form of decomposition, beautiful, fragrant, and ultimately putrid. I'll tell you a secret that would make Casanova weep into his wine. Every successful seduction carries within it the seeds of its own destruction. Not metaphorically, literally, chemically, biologically. The moment she says yes, the moment he surrenders, the moment the chase ends and the having begins, that's when the rot sets in. You can smell it if you know what you're sniffing for. That subtle shift from anticipation to satisfaction, from hunger to digestion. There was a study published in the Journal of Relationship Entropy, March 2024, that tracked couples' pheromone signatures over 5 years. The results were so disturbing, they buried it in the appendix. Within 6 months of achieving stable intimacy, both partners' chemical signatures began to smell, quite literally, like decay. Not death, decay, the slow, sweet rot of organic matter returning to Earth. The researchers called it olfactory habituation. The poets would call it the smell of love's corpse. But you want to know about Machiavelli's forbidden method, don't you? You want the power to seduce anyone, anytime. Let me tell you about a man I met in Budapest, in a bar that used to be a morgue, where the bartender still wears a coroner's coat as a joke that stopped being funny decades ago. This man, let's call him Martin, had a peculiar talent. Women fell in love with him constantly, devastatingly, ruinously. His secret? He only dated women who were leaving the country within 3 months. "I am always," he told me, his Hungarian accent making the words sound like a funeral dirge, "the last beautiful thing before departure. I am the rose they press between pages of a book they'll never finish reading. Perfect, because I am already ending." He showed me his apartment once. The walls were covered with letters from women all over the world. Love letters. Hate letters. Letters that were both and neither. Each one preserving a moment of perfect desire, frozen right before the rot could set in. He'd learned what the rose-mad botanist knew. The only way to keep beauty from putrefying is to kill it at its peak. Nietzsche wrote that all pleasure wants eternity, but he was wrong. Pleasure wants death at the moment of climax. It wants to be preserved in amber, not lived through to its logical conclusion. Every Romeo and Juliet knows this instinctively. Better to die at the balcony scene than live to see it become a mortgage negotiation. Here's what they don't tell you about the Garden of Eden. It wasn't the serpent that ruined paradise. It was the staying. The moment Adam and Eve decided to make a home there, to settle down, to turn passion into routine, that's when the roses started rotting. God didn't exile them. He mercy killed their romance before they could watch it decompose into matrimony. You want to know something that will freeze your blood like winter wind through wedding lace? A 2025 meta-analysis of divorce papers found that the phrase most commonly cited wasn't infidelity or irreconcilable differences. It was everything was perfect until we moved in, until we got married, until we got what we wanted. The getting's the dying. The having is the grave. So here's the question. I'll leave to fester in your mind like a beautiful infection. What if the thing you're chasing, this ability to seduce anyone, is actually just an elaborate way of collecting roses that are already dead? What if every successful seduction is just another exhibit in your private museum of decay? And what if, listen closely now, because this is the part that Machiavelli wrote in invisible ink. The only way to truly possess someone is to never quite have them at all? The botanist's manuscript ends with a single line, written in what forensic analysts confirmed was his own blood. The rose that blooms forever is the one that never opens. Martin still lives in Budapest, as far as I know, still seducing women who are already leaving. His apartment smells like pressed flowers and formaldehyde. He calls it the perfume of perfect love. We court what we fear and fear what courts us. She dances alone at midnight in a dress made of teeth. Not her teeth. That would be too simple, too honest. These are the teeth of everyone who ever said they loved her, collected one by one, sewn into silk with thread made from their promises. When she spins, you can hear them chatter like castanets, like a skeleton's applause. This is a story they tell in the mountains of Slovakia, but I know it's true because I've seen that dress. We all have. We wear it every time we say, "I love you," while checking our phone for other options. Let me tell you what Machiavelli knew, but was too diplomatically cunning to write plainly. We are all wolves dressed as sheep, dressed as wolves, so lost in our costumes we've forgotten which beast we started as. The greatest seducers aren't predators. They're prey that learn to make hunting look like surrender. I once watched a couple in a restaurant in Vienna, the kind where the waiters move like ghosts and the wine costs more than dignity. She was beautiful in that exhausting way that makes you tired just looking at her. He was handsome like a knife is handsome, sharp, functional, dangerous only if you're careless. They were performing love at each other. Every gesture calculated, every laugh timed, every touch a transaction. Halfway through the second course, I realized what I was watching. Two predators who'd each mistaken the other for prey, now trapped in an endless dance of mutual deception, neither able to admit they'd been hunting all along. The Austrian psychoanalyst Viktor Frankl once wrote, "No, that's a lie." He never wrote this. I'm writing it now, channeling his ghost through wine and insomnia. We fall in love with our fears dressed in evening wear. Think about it. Really examine your desires like a pathologist examines a corpse. That person you're desperately trying to seduce. What terrifies you about them? Their beauty, their indifference, their power to validate or destroy your fragile sense of self. A 2024 Harvard study on attraction patterns found something so unsettling they published it at 3 a.m. on a Sunday, hoping no one would notice. People are most attracted to those who remind them of their own mortality. Not physically, psychologically. We chase those who make us feel like we're dying because at least dying feels like something. But here's where Machiavelli's forbidden method reveals its true face, grotesque and gorgeous like a burn victim in a ball gown. The ultimate seduction isn't making someone want you. It's making them afraid of wanting you while being unable to stop. It's becoming their beautiful nightmare, their velvet catastrophe, their wolf in a wedding dress. I know a woman in Berlin who only dates men who are afraid of her. Not intimidated, afraid. Genuinely, viscerally terrified. She can smell it on them like cologne made from panic attacks. Fear, she told me over absinthe that tasted like liquid regret, is the only honest aphrodisiac. Everything else is just marketing. She collects their love letters in a box labeled evidence. Evidence of what? She wouldn't say. But her smile suggested it was evidence of a crime that hasn't been committed yet. Schopenhauer compared love to two porcupines trying to stay warm in winter. The closer they get, the more they wound each other. But he missed the truly dark joke. We're not porcupines. We're wolves who've convinced ourselves we're porcupines, using our imaginary quills as an excuse for why we keep biting. Here's something that will make you question every romantic moment you've ever cherished. Researchers at the Munich Institute for Behavioral Paradoxes, 2025, discovered that the pupil dilation we associate with attraction is identical to the pupil dilation of prey animals when they spot a predator. Our bodies literally can't tell the difference between falling in love and being hunted. The heart races the same way, the palms sweat the same fear, the breath catches in the same beautiful terror. So let me ask you something, and I want you to feel this question crawl across your skin like a lover's fingers made of ice. What if the person you're trying to seduce is also trying to seduce you, and you're both just wolves circling each other in wedding dresses, waiting to see who admits their teeth are real first? What if Machiavelli's ultimate forbidden truth is that there are no sheep in this game, only wolves who've gotten so good at pretending that they've forgotten what they are? The Slovak story ends with the woman in the tooth dress finding a man who isn't afraid of the chattering sound. He asks her to dance. She asks him why he's not running. He smiles and opens his mouth. His teeth are missing. Everyone given to women who promised to love him. They dance together in silence, two grotesque creatures finding beauty in their mutual monstrosity. But that's not really how it ends. It ends with them devouring each other, of course. Wolves always do. The wedding dress was just foreplay. The real seduction was making each other believe for one perfect moment that they were something other than hungry. The most perfect love is the one that never quite happens. In Florence, hidden 3 streets behind the Uffizi, there's a workshop that hasn't been opened since 1642. Inside, 17 sculptures stand half-emerged from marble, faces without eyes, hands reaching for absent lovers, bodies twisted in passion that will never complete its arc. The artist died mid-chisel stroke, they say, but the truth is more interesting. He stopped because he realized that finishing them would be a form of murder. Completion is death. Potential is the only immortality we know. This is the last secret, the one that makes all the others look like children's riddles whispered at a sleepover in a burning house. Machiavelli knew it. Kierkegaard danced around it. Nietzsche went mad trying to unsay it. Here it is, served raw and wriggling on a plate made from the bones of everyone who ever loved completely. The most powerful seduction is the one that never quite happens. I met death once, not metaphorically, actually met him, in a jazz bar in New Orleans at 4 a.m., when the tourists had gone home and only the genuinely damned remained. He was drinking whiskey that smelled like formaldehyde and flirting with a woman who kept almost leaving, but never quite did. "You know what kills people?" he asked me. "It's not disease or accidents or time. It's completion. The moment you get everything you want, you're already dead. You just haven't stopped moving yet." He bought me a drink and told me about his greatest frustration: humans who refuse to finish things. The almost lovers. The perpetual flirters. The ones who live their entire lives in the moment just before the kiss. "They're cheating," he said, genuinely irritated. "They've found the loophole. They'll never truly live, but they'll never truly die either. They exist in the eternal foreplay of existence." A study from the Tokyo Institute of Emotional Archaeology, January 2025, mapped the brain activity of people recalling their romantic histories. The most intense neural firing didn't come from memories of consummated relationships. It came from the ones that almost happened. The missed connections, the interrupted kisses, the confessions that stayed trapped behind teeth. Our brains literally value incompletion over satisfaction. We're neurologically wired to worship what we can't quite have. But here's where it gets sublime and terrible, like watching a cathedral burn while Mozart plays. The greatest seducers in history weren't the ones who bedded thousands. They were the ones who almost did. They were the ones who turned anticipation into an art form, who made foreplay last decades, who died with 1,000 people still waiting for a conclusion that would never come. I know a man in Tokyo who's been going on first dates with the same woman for 13 years. Every week, they meet as if for the first time. They've never kissed, never held hands, never acknowledged their history. They sit across from each other in different restaurants, telling the same stories with slight variations, like jazz musicians playing the same song in different keys. Both are married to other people. Both have children. But every Tuesday at 7 p.m. they meet for their eternal first date, living in the perpetual possibility of what might happen if they ever allowed a second. "We're sculpting," she told me once, when I recognized her at a gallery opening. "Every date carves away a little more of what's unnecessary. One day, we'll be nothing but the pure potential of love, with no actual love to ruin it." Schopenhauer believed that desire was suffering and satisfaction was disappointment. But he missed the third option, the eternal almost. The sculpture that stays half in the stone, the sentence that never finds its period, the seduction that never quite closes the deal. You wanted to know Machiavelli's forbidden method for seducing anyone, anytime? Here it is, the final revelation, the last truth before the lights go out. Don't. Get close. Get so close they can taste your breath. Make them believe that in the next moment, everything will change, and then hold that moment forever. Stretch it like taffy. Live in it like it's a mansion with infinite rooms. The moment before the kiss is worth 1,000 kisses. The moment before surrender is the only victory that matters. Look at your own life. I dare you. Look at it like a pathologist examining their own cancer. The person who haunts you, who lives rent-free in the condemned building of your mind, it's not the one who loved you. It's not even the one who destroyed you. It's the one who almost did. The one who left you standing at the threshold, invitation in hand, door half open, never quite entering, never quite leaving. So here's my final question. The one that will follow you into your dreams like a lover who knows your real name. What if you've been playing the game backwards all along? What if the point was never to win anyone's heart, but to become someone's eternal almost? What if Machiavelli's most forbidden truth is that the only successful seduction is the one that never succeeds? The workshop in Florence was eventually opened in 1987. The sculptures were gone. In their place, 17 piles of marble dust and a note. Completion is the enemy of desire. I have freed them from the tyranny of being finished. But there's one more thing. One final whisper before the candle goes out, and we're left in the darkness we've been avoiding all along. The artist who abandoned those sculptures? He didn't die. He fell in love with incompletion itself. They say you can still see him sometimes, in workshops around the world, teaching students to never quite finish what they start. He looks happy. He looks terrified. He looks like someone who's been falling for 300 years and decided he prefers it to landing. The Museum of Unfinished Sculptures isn't in Florence. It's in you. Every person you've almost loved, every word you've almost said, every life you've almost lived, they're all there, perfectly preserved in marble that will never release them. And that's the real secret. We are all sculptors, and we are all stone, and the chisel is time. And the only way to create something eternal is to never quite finish carving.